Thank you. Yes. So Yang is playing my role in running to the door and letting me know that there is no sound. Um, okay, yeah, can you hear me now? I'll wait 20 seconds to find out, right? Okay, what I was saying before is that I was hoping that we could do something very modest in this stream and basically make a reference mod for people who have never modded Stonehearth before. Um, this mod should be super straightforward, super simple, and if you have done any modding before, this will absolutely look familiar to you. But if you haven't done any modding before, I'm also kind of hoping the stream will be a bit interactive. So if you hear me say something that you don't understand, or hear a term that I use that you don't understand, just yell it out in chat. And we have several experienced modders in chat who will be able to answer your questions, and hopefully I will see your question and answer it also. Okay, so Stonehearth stream, making a reference mod. So super basic. What is a Stonehearth mod? As most of you probably already know, Stonehearth is written as a mod. So if you see here, like this is release 6.16. This is the release that I was actually playing in the last time I was streaming. And when you double click, this is Stonehearth as if you downloaded it from Humble Bundle or as if you opened it in Steam. When you double click on the executable, the game plays. Well, it loads and then it plays. Yes. Okay. So, so this game exists, the data for this game exists inside the mods folder. And Radiant.smod contains stuff that is common to Radiant. Stonehearth.smod contains stuff that is specific to Stonehearth. And if you want to create your own mod, then you would create a new folder in this directory and put all of your mod stuff inside of it. So the very first step of creating our own mod is to create a new folder right here. So new folder. Let's call it reference mod. This is a super clicky keyboard. All right. Okay, so reference mod. And I will go really slow because I know that later, hopefully, you can just watch this stream on fast forward 2x or faster. Okay, so our reference mod has nothing in it, and this is perfectly normal. The first thing that you want to put in your reference mod is something called a manifest.json file. And let's create it first, and then we'll talk about what that is. So to create a new file from Windows, it's really easy. You just right-click in the folder, you say you want a new text document, you name it manifest. This is manifest like a shipping manifest, like a list of things that are useful, that use of the word manifest. And JSON being a file extension, that means, I think, JavaScript, object notation, something like that. So manifest.json, we create it from a text file. It's all good. Windows says, hey, like if you change the thing, if you change the extension, which is the letters after the period on a file name, it might become unusable. Are you sure you want to change it? Yes. In this case, Windows wants to hold our hand. We are modders. We don't need any hand holding, or well, we do, but thank you, Windows. We will proceed anyway. Okay, so now we have a manifest.json file. What exactly is a JSON file? Does anyone want to define it? Okay, so what is a JSON file? It is just a file that is supposed to have a certain kind of format to it. So everyone is familiar with text files, I hope, zip files, those things. Different extensions determine how a file is used by your operating system. And if you happen to be one of those people who have extensions turned off on your Windows machine, you can learn how to turn extensions on here. Thanks, Froggy. That is exactly what it is. It's a JavaScript object notation file. So a JSON file is a file that organizes data in a very specific way. So this is our stream notes. We will use this to determine to talk about a little bit about JSON. So this is just a text file. So I guess if you want to skip ahead, if you are technical and and for some reason are in between knowing about technical things but have never seen JSON files before, you can read all about JSON at this location, json.org. This is a spec that describes everything that is in a JSON file. So, okay, let's start with an example of some kind of data that we will then reformat into JSON. So let us talk a little bit about how you write down data, like when you're doing a presentation or something. Let's say that I was trying to communicate information about Stonehearth to somebody. So what are some things that you might like people to know about Stonehearth? And I will write them down here. Okay, so if we were gonna put this in like a presentation about a video game, we might say something like the game name is Stonehearth, the genre, city builder, sim, survival. Is it complete? No. Is it in early access? Yes. Is it better than other games? Maybe. Okay. So what studio what's its studio? Is it Minecraft? No. Is it cute? Yes. Let's see. It's Radiant Entertainment, and let's say that we wanted to give you some information about the studio also. So 300 3rd Street, Los Altos, California. Is it cute? Yes. The number of developers, 8. And developer info, let's see, Tom, Tony, Stephanie, Albert, Chris, Yang, Brad, Doug. Right? Okay, cool. Do the developers have clicky keyboards? Yes, absolutely. Are there likely to be bugs? Like, none bugs. Infinite. Okay, so this is some information about Radiant and about Stonehearth, as you might write it down if you were going to put it into, like, you know, a PowerPoint presentation or something. Is the staff experienced and competent? Yes, thank you. We try. So what would this data look like instead if it were written instead in JSON? JSON is useful, as you can tell from the fact that it's JavaScript object notation. It was actually created so that it could be read easily into JavaScript, but it's actually used, it's so easy to read and it's so easy to write that it's actually used in lots of languages. So we use JSON to store the data for all of Stonehearth's files, which is why it's super useful to learn how to learn the basics of JSON here. And again, if you already know JSON, please jump in and help if anyone has any questions, and correct me if I say anything incorrectly. So JSON, at its most basic, is a way of structuring information into objects. And those objects are usually made up of key value pairs or lists of information. Since JSON is read by a computer programming language, it uses punctuation, things like brackets and commas, to delineate the ends of lines. And so these things, which are kind of incidental to us because we're reading the text and we're getting the text, they kind of look incidental, but the brackets and the commas are really important to the program to help the program figure out what, you know, where the line should end. Because the program can't actually glean any data from these words. So, you know, in order to figure out how to group words together, it has to pay special attention to the punctuation. So the basic piece of punctuation for JSON object, is the curly brace. So to denote that an object is a JSON object, you put it inside curly braces. And JSON files start with an opening and an ending curly brace. As in any coding language, if you open a curly brace or a parentheses or a bracket or anything, you always have to be sure to close it. So curly brace, curly brace. So the first thing to do to turn this into something that would be formatted in JSON is to put 2 curly braces on it. Okay, pausing a bit, does anyone have any questions in the stream for me? How hard is it to make Stonehearth available on a Mac? Ideally, well, I guess that's not related to JSON, but okay. Ideally, it shouldn't be too hard. We use OpenGL, which also runs on Macs, but we also know that there might be libraries and stuff that we are using that have Windows-specific things that we rely on, drivers that have Windows-specific things that we rely on, and so those things might start to vomit basically when we try to run the game on a Mac. We have given it a try, I think, once or twice. It did not run smoothly, and we don't have a great deal of Mac expertise between us at the moment, so we are going to save that to the end and try to fix all those bugs and change, take on that challenge all at once. Unclosed brace. Is there an unclosed brace already? Aha, undiscovered. Yes, did I? All right. So we basically tried to say, okay, hey, this is an object, but it's not completely an object yet because the stuff inside of it is not actually formatted correctly for JSON just yet. Anything else? Let's see. Connor Groove, yeah. Like JSON's one of those things that, it might take a little bit of a while to pick up, but once you know it, it'll be super useful. Okay, so the first thing that we want to put in this object is a key-value pair. The key in a JSON object is the way that the program identifies the data that it's going to use later. So in this case, the key is the game name. The key of this first thing is the game name. And keys are always something we call strings. Strings are really words or sentences, and they can be letters, numbers, spaces, any of the things that you usually write when you're writing. Those are considered strings in programming language. They can have spaces in them, but we tend not to like that. So we use underscores because it's easier to delineate when there's just one string. When they're all together. And strings are always put inside quotes. You can use single quotes, you can use double quotes, you just have to be super consistent. I think in this case, throughout Stonehearth, we use double quotes. Okay, so game name is going to be the key, and then the key is separated from the value, which is Stonehearth, by the colon, yes. And Stonehearth is also a string, so it is put in quotes like that also. Okay, so there we have an object. If I removed all of this, then this would be valid JSON, and you could import it into a program, and it would read it, and then you could find out the game name was Stonehearth. Okay, but we are not done yet because that is totally not interesting nor the end. Okay, since our object, this object, which begins and ends with this curly brace, has more than one thing in it, and this thing is not the last thing, it needs to have a comma at the end of it so that the JSON parser, the program that reads the JSON, knows where the end of the line is going to be. So we use a comma to denote that. Okay, genre is much like game name in that genre is also a key. We can do this just to make it easier to read. Its value is City Builder Sim Survival. So that's cool. So great. We've created 2 keys and 2 values, both of which are strings. Is it complete? Usually we didn't, it's like hard to write things a lot, so you see programmers use sort of like abbreviated words. No. So we could make no a string, just like this, and that would be perfectly reasonable, but one of the base types that a lot of program languages use in addition to strings is a type called Boolean, and Boolean just means something that can be true or false. Literally the characters true or the characters false. And so if you use a Boolean, then you don't have to say like if, later in code, you might write something like if the value equals no or something like, then do something else. If you can just do something like if value and it will just carry through. Anyway, for now, just know that you can you don't have to use a string. You can just type false here and it will work. Okay. Is early access. can also be a Boolean. True, like that. Again, no quotes. Better than everyone. There is no Boolean for maybe. There's no Boolean for debatable. If you really, really, really wanted to express maybe, you would have to do it as a string. Like that. Alright. Okay. Any other questions yet? At Stonehearth, will you show us how to make new items in armor and stuff, or that will be later? I will show you, if we get to it, how to make new items, but not armor. Armor is a little bit more complicated, and if this is useful to you, then maybe we can do something more complex next time. Okay. Studio is Radiant Entertainment, 303rd Street, Los Altos. So again, this is the key. This should look super familiar now. But this is actually like a kind of long value. We could turn this into a string, but maybe you might want to know the name of the studio and its address. So one thing you can do is, instead of making the value a string or a Boolean, true or false, you can make it another object. So you can recursively nest objects in JSON this way. It makes it super powerful. Usually you indent them so that it is a little bit easier to read. So the studio, if this is an object, then just like the parent object, it should also have key value pairs inside of it. So the studio's name is Radiant Entertainment. And its address is 303rd Street. Yeah. It's very true that when we write JSON, so is it cute? At the end of this object, it's not the last one, so it also does a thing. It's absolutely true, Nicholas Lionwriter, that when we make mods, we actually cut, copy, paste from existing code. One side effect of this is that sometimes we copy paste things like archback chair template or archback chair into birdbath and turn the birdbath into a chair. Cut, copy, paste is super useful. It's also really, really bad, but you know, it's definitely more efficient than writing it from scratch. We are writing it from scratch today because I honestly think that typing is a very soothing way of making sure that you are writing things correctly. If you do cut, copy, paste, there's a chance that you are going as fast as you can, which is definitely useful in many situations, but offers less time to actually write things down. It's like when teachers used to write things down on chalkboards, or write them down longhand. You had time to like take notes, but when everyone gives you like PowerPoint slides, sometimes the temptation is, oh, I'll just look at the slides later. Okay, well anyway. So number of outstanding bugs, infinite is not a number. The last thing that can be or not the last thing, another thing that can be a value in JSON are numbers. So like 8, 8.4, like any kind of integer or floating point number can be a value, and you don't need to put that in quotes because it just understands that it's a number. Okay. Can you have that can you have the thing? I think you actually can have this question mark, but we tend not to because it's not actually clear sometimes what the parser can and cannot understand. We tend to remove punctuation and stuff and spaces just in case, but I think theoretically you should be able to do it. Wouldn't number of developers and developer info be in Studio? Actually, that is a really good point, and we can do that too. So let's see. So we would do that by doing this. It really depends on like what data is in what area. It really depends on the program that's reading it and what the program that's reading it, expects. Okay. So let's see. Is programming hard? I think that programming is hard the way that writing a novel is hard, or the way that drawing is hard. Like, it starts out hard and then it gets easier the longer you do it. Okay, so let me see. Okay, going back briefly, another thing that you can do in JSON is so we've talked about values that are strings, which are these guys, booleans, which are these guys, numbers, which are these guys. You can also make lists of things a value. So if you wanted to say developer info, and that was like a list of names, for example, you can depict that as a list by putting it between two braces, like this. So this is how, you know, this is slightly different. The only other complex item inside JSON. So in this case, everything inside the braces is an item in the list. Each item in the list is separated from each other item in the list by a comma. Lists tend to be groups of similar things, but you could certainly make a list of non-similar things also. You can put so this makes it a list of strings. Each string is a developer name. And oftentimes we also make list items. Oops. You know, in a list like vertically so that they're easier to read. There isn't a lot of word wrapping in code files because we like having everything within 90 columns. Anyway, but so, okay, so this would be a list of names. They're all the same. They're separated by commas. That is the last kind of type in JSON. If you really want to be exciting, you can also put objects inside lists. So for example, if instead of just Tom, I wanted to say that I wanted to give you more information about Tom, I could say that developer info has the first developer, his name is Tom, and his title is, let's say he has multiple titles. This is actually what it says as his title inside our team chat. So yeah, we could do this for everybody. Like, and this is again why why cut copy paste is super tempting. Etc. Okay, cool. So we could do this for all of the rest of us, but you get the idea. Okay. You can totally write JSON in a text file like this. This is WordPad, but it's actually incredibly difficult to do so because it's very hard to see whether stuff matches up. If you put it inside a text editor like Sublime, every time you write any kind of thing that is supposed to be matched by something else, you get another one of it. So that definitely makes it much easier to, well, okay, evidently except for parentheses sometimes. So that definitely makes it easier to make sure that you have it correct. And if you are curious as to whether or not your JSON is accurate, let's see, whoops, new window. You can put it into a JSON validator like JSONlint, which I'm sure you have seen Tom use a lot. Oops, where are we? So this will let us know, no, this is not valid JSON. There's a parse error on line 8, line 10, sorry, 8 comma, line 10, num developers 8. Ah, right, since this is not the last thing, since this is the last thing in this object, it shouldn't have a comma at the end of it. Okay, so that is JSON in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions about JSON or how it works that I or other people in the chat can answer for you? Okay, looking backward. There's no civil. Tony is not the other final boss. I guess not. They will have to figure it out between them. You'll have to ask them how they work that out. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Java, C Sharp, Python, they're all languages that have different qualities to them. I would say that there's a set of languages that are strongly typed that are based on classes. That would be C, C++, C Sharp, Java, and all the languages that inherit from it. And then there's languages that are scripts, like Python and JavaScript and really Lua. And all these and the script languages and the class languages have two very different methodologies. Script languages tend to be really super easy to pick up, but they tend to be difficult to write really large programs in. In order to write a really large program in a script language, you tend to also have to include some class-like behavior into it, which kind of makes it more complicated. And script languages kind of have to be bent a lot in order to be used that way. You can, in fact, start with Java or C Sharp. If you start with a program, in my opinion, you can totally start with any language. I started in C. You can start with any language as long as the program that you're taking sort of like describes it in a step-by-step mechanism. Okay, see you, Pandemic, later. All right. King Foxtrot, yeah, I personally picked Paladin of Wombats, but all of those work very well, thank you. Joey Crawford, do I need to be good at math to excel in programming? I personally don't think so. I think that programming is about looking at the world very logically and very calmly, because the computer doesn't really know what you mean. The computer only knows what you write. And we humans are really good at discerning meaning from each other, but really bad at writing precisely. So the computer is often telling, when you write a program for the first N years of it, you will often be seeing like, oh wow, the computer doesn't understand what I want it to do. And you just have to be very methodical about solving this. That is a quality that mathematicians also have, but it's also a quality that really good artists have. The ability to look at a piece of work and figure out what is wrong with the anatomy of the person that you're looking at and fix it, like that is the exact same thing that we use in programming. Okay. But yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, okay. And then there is some computer science that legitimately does involve math, as Yang points out. And that is the Pathfinder and a lot of the rendering stuff and that kind of stuff. But like, if you want to work in like UI or something or game logic, then it probably doesn't require like the ability to transform objects in space. Yes, exactly. Okay, so what I wanted to do, I actually have to go in about 20 minutes, so we'll just get as far as we can here. But okay, so we saw here that we can turn data into JSON, and what that was leading up to was the fact that the very first thing that you need to do when creating a mod is create a manifest.json file. Okay, so we had written, we created it out of a text file, but it is empty. So what exactly needs to go into the manifest.json file? Basically, Stonehearth is expecting your mod's manifest.json to contain like a little bit of data about all the things in your mod. So a sample manifest.json file for this sample thing would start with an open and close curly brace, because it's a JSON file and this is the first and primary object. And the very first thing it needs is an info, like this. Let's see. Info. And this info is also going to be an object, and it is going to have the name of our mod and the version number of our mod. And you want this to be version 1, because we are past whatever alpha, whichever alpha, like past December or something, when we decided to start versioning our mods. Okay, so this mod is named reference mod. Okay, so that is the most basic set of info that your manifest.json needs. This is all that needs to be in there in order for the mod to work, but obviously there's nothing in the mod right now. So the first thing that we probably should do after making this is add something. So the very next thing that the manifest.json will probably want to have is a section called aliases. And in this case, alias is being used to mean like fake identity or fake name, but also real identity or real name. So all of the files that are used in the mods in Stonehearth exist in a location on your hard drive, like c:/work:/ or work/ like my mod name / entities / name of my object. But it's very inconvenient to refer to them always using their full file path, because the file path changes a lot when you drag stuff around and want to reorganize things, and because you don't want to type all the time. So the alias is like a short name, like for the thing that you're referring to. So let's say that we wanted to add a very simple object to the game. We'll call it sample object. Since the mod's name is reference mod, and we've given this object the name sample object, you can always refer to this object as reference mod / sample object in places that need it. And then this sample object needs to exist at a location. We don't know what that location is yet because our folder is empty, but let us create a place where this sample object could live. We'll call it entities because most objects that exist in the world tend to be entities. Entities is our word for things that exist in the world. We'll make another folder called sample object that's going to store all the stuff that is needed for the sample object. And then inside of here, we will make a sample object.json file, which will contain the data that is required to read and understand the sample object. Okay. Yes. All right, so sample object.json is empty, but we know that it is at this location. File. Oops. So this file says, give me the file path relative to where the manifest is. So you might remember that the manifest was here. So this file path is going to start with entities, sample object. So thank you, Sublime. Sample object.json. Right. Okay. So, and that is this file right here. So what is inside sample object.json? Well, one of the easiest ways to start off a brand new object is to look inside Stonehearth for an existing object and use that as sort of a template. And something that I don't know how many of you guys know is that Stonehearth, as I said, it's written as a mod, so you can actually open it yourself and take a look inside. Let's just do it like this. We named it smod for Stonehearth mod, but actually it's just another way of saying zip, so you can rename the extension to zip and extract it. And when you look inside the extracted folder and the unzipped folder, you will see all of the files that we use. And all of the JSON files are unobfuscated, so you can just copy them. So for example, inside Stonehearth's entities, let's look at resources. Good old wooden log. So this is log.png, juniper and oak log. Actually, let me make a new window. File Explorer. Stonehearth mods. So we want to go to, Stonehearth mods, reference mod, entities, sample object.json. Okay, so here is oak log, here is oaklog.json. So you can see that this is what is inside an oak log. And we want to copy some of the basics of it out into our sample object. So what does that entail? Well, let's not worry about mixins yet. Let's not worry about item properties, but you can do this. The type of our object is going to be an entity. It's going to have the following components. Components are blobs of code that we use to attach things. Let's see. The first component that it needs is unit info. So its name is no longer oaklog, but you can specify its description. Icon file. Let's see, what should I put here? Well, this sample object doesn't have an icon yet, but oops, let's see. Sorry. No, that's not it. I have too many windows. This one? Okay, here we go. So let us do this. we will copy the QB file. This is the file that exists in the game. And we will copy the icon for the log. And we'll put them both into sample object and rename them because they're not going to be samples anymore. So let's see, this is going to be sample.png. This is going to become sample.qb. And that means that this is, okay, so we've described the unit info, which is great, but now we also should describe what the log will look like in the game. So that is determined by the model variance component. So this is saying model variance, my default model is going to be sample.qb. And that means that since we copied sample.qb from the log, it's going to look like a log in the game. All right. Okay, so manifest.json has reference mod in it. It has the sample object in it. Let's test to see if this works. How do we test it? Let me bring chat back just in case you have questions. I believe that's everything that it needs. Let's do one more thing. Let's make sure that our sample log looks different than the normal log. Just so that we know that we didn't just create a log and drag it into the game. I should mention that I feel a little conflicted doing this. So this is Cubicle Constructor, where we make the logs. If you drag the QB file into Cubicle Constructor, you will then see it. Here is the log. Let us turn it a tasteful ash color. Let's see, what's a good ash color? This, make it a little bit more yellow. Let's fill it. Let's see, fill tool, right? Okay, so now it kind of looks, it's gonna look like a jelly roll. Let's see, apologies to Tom. Tom makes really, really, really beautiful models. And like, I don't want to make our default model something in the game that he's then going to feel really bad that I did. So let's just say that we've made an ashen version of the log. Let's save it. Let's see. Oh, so the default wants to save as a QMO. That's fine. Let's see, desktop downloads. Let's save the QMO somewhere, like the place where we were, I believe. Desktop. Do you have a document section? Oh my god, Windows 8. You are so frustrating. I cannot even begin to tell you. Seriously? Seriously? Alright. Let's try that. Okay, we'll name it sample.qmo. QMO, and then let's export it. Oops, we need to go back to the model to export it. So we're going to export everything, and then we're going to export it as a QB. No, I don't want it to go there, I want it to go here. So let's save it as sample.qb. We'll save it over the existing one. Right-handed, encode visibility, okay. So now sample.qb should be white. And since we created this sample mod in the, oops, this is so sad. Since we created this inside the Stonehearth folder, right, inside the mods folder, when we run the game, this mod should be active. So stonehearth.exe, go. Okay. Oops, it's like a whole new log, exactly. All right, we want a new game because if we use the old game, then it won't load the mod anew. So let's just plop ourselves down somewhere random. Does anyone have any questions so far? Spilicus asks what the reference mod is. I just want to make a mod to put on the internet so that if someone wants to make a mod themselves, they can. All right, so our reference mod name was reference mod, and the thing that we created was sample object. So if we go here to the item dropper, which I illustrated was in the debug tools before, we should be able to do this. Type reference mod, sample object, and hit this button. Alright, and as you can see, we can now stamp white logs into the world. So our mod successfully created a sample object. We successfully made that sample object have a new name, a new description, and a new model based entirely on things that you can extract from Stonehearth, the program itself. Okay, 642, not bad. Any questions? Okay, so, yeah, one of the things that is difficult is to have everything documented. Like, I'm basically pulling all the stuff from existing files in Stonehearth, in the Stonehearth file. So, like, for example, we looked at Oaklog in order to create sample object. And I mean, like, what is all this other stuff? I mean, like, it must be useful, right? But, you know, how do you know what is the minimum to pull in? Well, you just have to go with the basics and do a lot of experimentation. And eventually we want to write that all down and make it super clear, but we don't at the moment have that for you yet. In part because the more we write, like the more well, every time you document, you have to write a bunch of stuff down, you want to make it really clear, and then every time we change the game, we'd have to change the documentation. So it's in our best interests to put the documentation off as long as possible. And in the meantime, if you guys are ready to mod right now, like, you can totally, like, modding right now is difficult because the game is changing. So if you have the patience to do it, then hopefully you'll have the patience to understand that there's no documentation either. But how to add an object to the game is fairly straightforward. Aliases probably isn't going to be changing much, so you can absolutely do this and then use debug tools, which is that clone stamper, in order to see your stuff in the game. Really quickly, one thing that I would also like to show you is if you didn't just want your sample object to appear in the game via the clone stamper, how would you actually get it into the game legitimately? Like if you wanted to create something that could be used. The fastest way to do that at the moment is probably to make it into something that is crafted as a recipe. In order to do that, you need to use something called a mix into. So this is a section of the manifest, just like the aliases, that defines how your mod is going to interact with the main Stonehearth mod. In particular, mix-intos are files that you create in your mod that are then merged with existing files in the Stonehearth mod. So for example, if we wanted sample object to be something that was craftable, like, I don't know exactly how it's a log, but I mean, okay, if in theory we wanted it to be craftable by the carpenter, that means that we need to create a recipe file in our mod with the sample log recipe in it that can then be merged into the carpenter recipe file inside Stonehearth. So where is the carpenter recipe file? This is kind of hard to, this might be a little bit hard to find. You'd have to sort of like go through here and poke through all these folders to figure out where it is. As it is, I can kind of tell you it's inside jobs, carpenter, recipes, and these are all the carpenter recipes. You can look at them here, and the recipes file, which is the base of the carpenter's recipes. So dragging that in here. These are like all the recipes that the carpenter does. So, so that means that if we took that file path, that is this file path, right? Okay, see, Sublime is telling me that I haven't closed my quotes optimally. And so that is the thing that we're going to be mixing into, and we need to make a file for what we are going to, the thing that we are going to merge into the carpenter recipes. Since recipes.json, the carpenter's recipes is a JSON file, the thing that you take to merge into carpenter recipes is also a JSON file. So we obviously don't have this folder yet. We have to create it. Dun, dun. So that's new folder, recipes, and then new text document, recipes.json. Okay. This recipes.json file is going to be empty, but we can copy what should be in it from over here. It should have the same format. It should have every object that is required in the hierarchy for the merging. So let's say that we wanted to add our sample object so that it's craftable by the carpenter, like as a piece of furniture or something. So we need to copy craftable recipes. This, right? And then we want to come down here to furniture. Oops. And we don't need to copy anything from furniture except the part that we, except the object that we know that we need to copy into. So let's call this sample recipe. Again, this is the key. What is the value? The value is going to be an object with the recipe inside of it. It's a little bit redundant. I mean, like, there's definitely a time in which, you know, we didn't have an object. The sample recipe was just sample recipe : file name, but then we wanted to say, like, oh, what if some recipes start out locked or something? It turns out that we didn't end up using that, but okay. So anyway, so here, this looks just like this, except that we're going to say that to craftable recipes furniture, we're adding this sample recipe, and it'll get mixed into here. And what is the file that contains that sample recipe? We don't have that yet, but I'm going to guess it's going to be called sample recipe 1. And then I will just create it here. So new, oops, text document, whoops, sample recipe 1 dot JSON. Okay. All right. So what does a recipe look like? We can do the dangerous thing and look at comfy chair or something, right? So this is what a recipe looks like. Again, starts with the braces. No, that's not comfy chair recipe. There we go. That's the comfy chair recipe. Its type is not entity. Its type is recipe. What else? Work units. Oh my god. 2. That's how many times the carpenter saws. Recipe name. Flavor is the flavor text. Portrait is the picture that appears. In this case, the portrait needs to go back out of the recipes folder and back into the entities to get to sample.object.png, sample.png. So the easier thing to do here is just to say reference mod sample object, right? Like this. Yeah, go the other way. Okay, it's the portrait. Let's check. You might want to include a level requirement, but in this case, for easier testing, let's say 0. See again how the numbers, you don't need quotes around them. And then finally, the fun part, ingredients. So, let's see. Dangerous. Cut, copy, paste. Ingredients. Let's say that we just need 1 piece of wood to create 1 piece of wood. Material, let's say wood resource, not cloth resource. Count 1, we need 1 of them. And then finally we have produces, which is like what is actually going to be the output of this recipe. Okay, and it is a, what is it, sample, it's a reference mod. Reference mod. Right. And the fine is what happens when you make a fine version of it, but we don't have a second object, so let's just make this. All right, so in both cases, we make that. All right, so cool. So what have we done? We have said that we are going to mix this recipe, this new recipes.json file into the carpenter recipes. This recipes.json file is going to add a recipe to the furniture section. This sample recipe is going to be here, and you are going to use it to create a reference mod sample object. Right, okay, cool. Does anyone see anything that might cause this to not work? Okay, there's no way to find out if it works except to test it, so let us do that next. Keeping the chat open, let us go back to Stonehearth. Okay, reference mod. Right, this is Stonehearth. I've missed a few questions. Okay. Let us find out if this works and try reposting your questions if I haven't seen them, and I will try to answer them. Stonehearth.exe. It is totally possible that I've typed something wrong, that I've forgotten a comma somewhere, that I've forgotten to lint, and any of these things could cause this to not load. Ideally, we would have a tool to let you know that you had typed something wrong or that we couldn't find your file path or something like that. But as it is, it will just error in the window, and then you will have to look at the error and try to figure out what happens. Okay, so recipes sounds delicious in sample.json. You name recipes to so I've misspelled recipe at some point. Recipes. Okay. Type recipe. Sample recipe, your description here, wood resource. Recipe underscore sample underscore recipe underscore 1. Recipe sample recipe 1.json. Craftable recipes, yes. Tell me the file in which I've misnamed it if you see it. This stream will be archived on Twitch, so you can certainly watch it again on Twitch if you need to see it again. Okay, moments of truth. Wow, this is Silkweed Tin. This is lovely. I think this is Alpha 10.2, which is very nice because it's very stable. The current Alpha is not stable, but it has a whole ton of performance improvements. So for testing, Alpha 10.2 or Alpha 10.5 is pretty awesome, but for playing, you'll just have to stick with Alpha 11 with us until we make it better. Alright, so there's the carpenter. Do we have more furniture? Oh, we have failed somehow. Okay, so otherwise it should have totally appeared here. And we do not know why. Can we find out why? The answer is usually inside the stonehearth.log somewhere. Stonehearth.log contains things that, contains messages and errors and stuff. So let's see. Reference? No? Okay. Does this still work? Alright, so that still works. So something else is wrong. And unfortunately, it is not really clear. Could not find path? No, that's not it. It's not really clear exactly what is wrong. Maybe manifest.json was saved. File, Stonehearth jobs carpenter, recipes.json, sample recipe, recipes. Maybe this is it? Right? Is that what you were trying to tell me? Thank you. See, like, recipes is actually really difficult to spell, along with things like implement. Okay, let's try this one more time. Sample object JSON mix into? Okay, hopefully I've caught it. You guys are so awesome. I've heard a lot of good things about pair programming, which is where you have two people sit at a computer together and program together, because people will find stuff like this. Like, your partner will see that you have mistyped and will let you know immediately instead of later. Obviously, the downside of this is that it's not really clear if two people pair programming create as much code or as much progress as two people working individually, but there are definitely companies that swear by it, and it has definitely worked for me in the past. One downside to pair programming is that if you happen to be an introvert, having another person stare at your code all the time is, like, kind of challenging, but hopefully the gains that you get from it should make it more bearable. Okay, come on, build that workshop. Twitch archives don't last long enough, we have to save somewhere else also. Alright, I will ask Tom. Okay, it's still missing. That's interesting. Definitely in furniture. Alright, let us try one more time. Manifest.json, Stonehearth, jobs, carpenter. Stonehearth, jobs, carpenter, recipes, recipes.json. And then this goes into recipes, recipes.json. Usually if the path is wrong, it will let you know. The log will let you know somewhere. So let's actually check the stonehearth.log again. Oops. So we know the mod is being loaded because the sample object was successfully spat out by the item stamper. But okay, file recipes.json. If I look in the mods, reference mod, recipes, RECIPES, right? Alright, and then RECIPES.json. Okay. Recipes.json. Craftable recipes, furniture, sample recipe, RECIPE. 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 Oops. Recipes.json. Craftable recipes, furniture. Oh, sorry. I think we need another thing here, right? So this is furniture, and this actually goes in a list called recipes. So recipes, like this, and this is an object, right? Okay, so the first object in recipes is the sample recipe. So coding is a little bit tedious. Alright, hopefully this works. Recipe, right? So sample recipe will be a pure simple wooden chair. Let's try this again. I could say we should try it one more time because I actually have to go really soon. I used to have a Wushu instructor who would say one more time when she really meant 500 more times. I guess that was supposed to be like encouraging or something, but anyway, let's really try it one more time this time. Okay. So yeah, so that's kind of frustrating. So we didn't actually get an error message because the recipe was being included properly. It was just being included one level up. And that made it hard for the program to read. Yeah, this is real game time. Exactly. Like, you know that it's working because there are bugs, and you know that it's working because there are crashes, and because it is frustrating. But, you know, when things are frustrating, that also often means that when they actually work, it's very satisfying. There was a time when I played video games, definitely, because they were very thrilling. And then when I took up programming, I discovered that hitting the run button and finding out if stuff worked or not was like just as, oh god, it's still not there. Okay, so there is something wrong still, and sometimes you fight the boss and you lose. Sometimes you fight the boss and you win. This is very frustrating. Sample recipe1.json, for God's sakes. Sample recipe1.json. Sample recipe1.json is totally in the same file, right? Right? Its type is recipe, its recipe name is here, its flavor is flavorful. Reference mod entities sample object. Entities sample object. Sample.png, that is totally right. Ingredients are here, produces is here. Stonehearth.log, do you have anything to say for yourself? Okay, this is very disappointing, and I would very much have liked you to see this working, but unfortunately I have to go. So I will figure out what is wrong. I will post a better version of this reference mod so that you can actually use it as reference, and then we will go from there. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. Do you have any last questions? Radiant Yang asks if she wants me, or if I want her to take over if you need to go. You may absolutely. I'm sure it's something really, really stupid.
I got a few minutes.
Hey, awesome. Alright, stream. Yang is here. Let's see.
How do I turn this thing off afterwards?
How do you turn this thing off? Hit this button, and then go to this button.
Which button?
This one.
Okay.
To mute, and then go to this button, and just click it. This one.
Okay.
Yeah. Alright. So everything is in this folder. Mods. Reference mod.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's something really lame.
Right.
Alright.
Cool.
Hi,
Hi everybody! Alright, I'm gonna take over and figure out why this isn't happening. You have mix into okay, what does manifest, what does the default Stonehearth manifest look like? Stonehearth manifest. Okay, so you have aliases. It all looks correct. Do we have mix into? There's no such thing as a mix. Okay. Ah, I see. We want to mix into this guy. I don't know where Twitch comments are, so oh, there they are. Don't know if I will actually get this, but we'll see what happens. Alright. So first, Stephanie was checking out the Stonehearth log, so we will do that. Reference mod similar. So Stonehearth log, and let's see how much this one has. If we look for JSON here, is it unrecognized object type boxed in JSON to Lua? I think box is a problem. How many people is on the team again? There's me, Stephanie, Tom, me, Stephanie, Tom, Tony, Albert, and Doug. So yeah, this is 6. Did you guys meet Winnie yet? She's our intern. And she's working on some secret stuff. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it or not. We're supposed to mix into Stonehearth. Do we have any samples for what mix into looks like? You still have trouble while streaming and recording? Yeah, I definitely do not know how to talk and actually keep my mind focused. So this is my first time doing anything. I actually don't know what I look like. Do I look like anything? Okay. I'm on stream, fortunately. Yes, she is working on biomes. Mix in twos. Now the modules have been loaded. For all the mix in mix in twos. Mix in twos. Is this one typed F5? Nope. Do you guys remember where she was running the game from? Here? Yes. Thanks. Yeah, unfortunately I'm not actually sure of our internship process. But I assume at some point we decided that there would be a posting for internships available. Oh, also the you can't use, I don't think you can use you have to make a new game. What am I working on? I am currently doing a lot of quality of life changes, and you'll see a lot of those in Alpha 11, so actually what I'm working on right now is making it so when you select a stockpile, the little UI shows up that says the contents of the stockpile. But then if you close that UI, you can't get it back again unless you unselect and deselect it. So if you do this, this stockpile shows up, unselect it, you can't get it back again unless you click off of it and click back on. So I'm gonna see what everyone's feedback on that is, but right now I'm adding like a button here that you can click that will show this UI, and also I'm making it so you can reselect this thing. So if you click on it again, this UI will show up. So a lot of these little quality of life changes. So, oh, this is a old build. I see. You are still in Alpha 10.5, so you do not have a lot of my debug commands. Another thing I like to do is make debug commands, because on The Sims 4 and The Sims 3, as a developer, it made things a lot easier if we could have, if we could quickly change a Sim's attributes or quickly change their job level. It made things a lot easier to simulate and test. So there it is, sample recipe, hooray! So the problem was that it was mix in twos instead of mix in two. So there we go. And I don't know why this little image isn't showing up, probably because we didn't define that in the recipe somehow. But hooray, we added a sample recipe. What is it gonna make? I don't even know. Is this gonna work? You gonna do it? Woo! It's a box! A sample object with a sample description. Alright, there we go. So I probably need to run in a little bit as well. Hopefully the stream is still going. Does anybody have any questions? Who? Name? Yes, the back to main menu button, it exists, but there's nothing that actually, there's no C++ binding to make it work, so I need to pester someone to make that work. But the concept is there, it's just not fully implemented, so I can look into doing that next. It will be multiplayer. Multiplayer is on our agenda. It'll just take some time. Unfortunately, I do not know this computer very well, and so I would not be comfortable trying to mess with it that much. But Tom will be back probably on Thursday, so he will do names then. How do I like Lua? Lua is fine. It reminds me a lot of Python. There are, pros and cons to it. This is Dakota, our Lua debugger. Debugging it is a little bit harder because there's not very good debuggers out there. But other than that, it's been a fairly nice language to me so far.